Turn the lights on for the Tyler Bright and Early podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Bright, PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football centered. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on Instagram, X, and TikTok. You can watch and listen to full episodes on Spotify and YouTube. Let's recap what happened last week in week 3 of the college football season. Starting off with LSU versus Florida in the primetime game. The Gators playing competitive against the number 3 team in the country, but DJ Lagway throwing 5 interceptions proved to be costly for the Gators, and they are ice cold on the season, but Billy Napier is red hot on the hot seat for the coaching spot in the Florida Gators. And now USF and Miami, the other game in Florida, Miami dominating in a delayed game against one of the best group of 5 teams in the country with Brown at the quarterback position for the Bulls. They're still going to be hot contenders, and I don't think this changes anything for them moving forward into the season, but Miami just looking to be one of those top teams. Look out for them once they get in the ACC play. Other games that stood out, Texas A&M and Notre Dame, the 41-40 victory for the Aggies, and Notre Dame 0-2 so far in the season. Are they the same team as they were last season? Kind of replicating the same woes that they had early on in the season as they got upset by the NIU Huskies of the MAC Conference and Thomas Haymock, an emotional win for him. And off to a slow start once again, starting off 0-2, but still ranked in the AP top 25. I think that's shocking, by the way. I feel like that's playing too much of what you're anticipating for them to do in the future, which is not how I think you should be doing the AP poll. I think you should be ranking the top 25 teams right now as they are. Stop looking ahead. But I don't have a vote, and they do, so they decided. Other games that happened, obviously the Georgia and Tennessee game was sensational, going into overtime, and boy, that kicker. Rough spot to be in if you're him. But I anticipated Georgia to win that game. And honestly, I think Georgia needed to win that game themselves. Those young players I feel like they learned something in that game. Something clicked for the Bulldogs. And I feel like people are forgetting that this team won the SEC last season because they got bounced in their first game of the college football playoff. Georgia's here to play, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. But, and of course, the Georgia Tech Clemson 24-21 victory for the Yellow Jackets at Bobby Dodd Stadium. Brent Key, he just knows what he's doing. Brent Key is a good head coach, and Georgia Tech's not an easy place to win at. The high academic standards, it's an engineering tech school. He's doing a great job. And Buster Faulkner, he's going to get some looks as a head coach as well later down the road into the season. We'll see where he ends up or if he decides to stay there. And, he wants to keep kind of roll with what they got going there. I don't know. Georgia Tech's definitely a top team in the ACC. But yeah, those are all the games that happened last week that stood out to me. But we also got to mention some of the firings already after the first 3 weeks. UCLA and Virginia Tech both fired their respective head coaches. DeShaun Foster out at UCLA. Brent Pry out at Virginia Tech. So who are the candidates? And where are those programs? Which one's the better program? Now, if you were to ask me, I think Virginia Tech's the better program. Now, why? Well, just because I think UCLA, DeShaun Foster was set up to fail. Chip Kelly left kind of late in the cycle with the Bruins, heading over to Ohio State to become their offensive coordinator. They kind of were just like, well, we have DeShaun Foster. He played there, he's coached there, but he was just set up to fail. Had no play calling experience, of course, no head coaching experience. All he was a GA and a running backs coach. How is that going to translate to becoming a head coach? And it just seemed like the wrong fit. You saw it at Big Ten Media Day. It just didn't seem like it was the right fit for him. And it showed. And they're moving in a different direction. As for Virginia Tech, now, Brent Pry came in a rough spot. Justin Fuente, that roster was decimated by the time Brent Pry came in there. But Brent Pry, he hasn't taken the next steps. I feel like he's been around long enough where something should have changed for Virginia Tech. Now, I don't believe Virginia Tech is this blue blood. They're not the same that what they were under Frank Beamer. But how they've been playing the first 3 weeks. I mean, you gave up a boatload of points against Old Dominion, and it's really just inexcusable. There's really no reason you should lose to Old Dominion by that much. Just shocking. But who are some of the candidates? Well, I think for UCLA, Tony White is an option. He's the defensive coordinator at Florida State. I personally would wait a little bit on him. And now he had a great track record, did some great stuff at Nebraska, has some ties to the program. But if I were UCLA, I would kind of go in the opposite direction. You see a lot of times in these coaching searches, after they went one way, they fling the pendulum and they go in another direction. They go into something that is the complete opposite. Complete opposite, excuse me. So if you hired an offensive coach your last time, you hire a defensive coach. I'm not saying that they need to necessarily do that, but I do think experience is super valuable for that program, especially since UCLA, I really do feel like it's a dumpster fire right now. I feel like players are going to be leaving left and right, and they just need someone to hold on to them. Tim Skipper is the interim head coach for UCLA, by the way. And Phil Montgomery is the interim head coach at Virginia Tech. He's had some experience as a head coach at Tulsa. Another option that I heard that was kind of floating around was Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees' dad has connections to the program. I believe played and coached there. Definitely played. I like Tommy Rees, but I don't know if I would personally pick him as the head coach. Rumor has it that he was in line for the North Carolina job before Bill Belichick kind of swooped in and took that job. But I don't hate it. He was a pretty good offensive coordinator in Notre Dame. He was okay at Alabama in the one season under Nick Saban. They made the college football playoff. I know whenever I think of Tommy Rees, I think of that famous clip that they found of him on NBC, "Do your job up in the press box," classic. But I think Tommy Rees will eventually become a head coach one day. I just don't know if it's at UCLA. Wouldn't be totally shocked. Another option is Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen could also be another great coaching hire for them. I feel like it's a little bit too early, just because he just took the job at UNLV. We'll see though. I wouldn't be completely surprised. I think he'd do a great job at UNLV. As for Virginia Tech, Shane Beamer, he's not going to Virginia Tech. So I'm shooting that down right now. He's not going to Virginia Tech. The only plausible way he goes to Virginia Tech is if he gets fired at South Carolina. And we'll talk about that game a little bit later when we talk about another school that they just lost to this past week. But he's not going to get fired. I just, unless the doors just completely fall off and they lose like the rest of the games this season. But I don't think it's happening. South Carolina is a better job than Virginia Tech as of right now, and probably for the foreseeable future because they have the SEC money. It's just how it is. It's not the same. It's just not the same right now. And it's not the same for when Frank Beamer was the head coach, when his dad was the head coach. It's not happening. I just don't see it. Some other couple options that you can go if you're Virginia Tech. Well, there's a lot. Alex Golish is a really hot candidate right now, but I think he's going to wait out a little bit. I think he's going to wait out, kind of see what bigger jobs he can go and kind of poach out there when the opportunities come to fruition. Some people are saying Michael Vick. I think no shot. He's going to stay at Norfolk State, or should stay at Norfolk State. Another name that was mentioned was Jeff Monken, which I think could be really interesting. Maybe bring out kind of what Paul Johnson did at Georgia Tech. Maybe you get Jeff Monken in Virginia Tech. I think that's a little bit of a stretch because I think he's an Army lifer. But I think if you're looking 5 years down the road, UCLA has the potential to be the better program than Virginia Tech. But as of right now, Virginia Tech's the better program. But also, I can't think of any immediate names that jump out to mind. I'm not going John Gruden. Not happening. Not at that spot. But yeah, I think that's everything we got on those two programs. So let's switch gears a little bit. So, College Game Day selected to go to Miami for Miami and Florida, week 4. And I'm just like, why? Why is that the pick? I think I know why. ESPN needs to go to a certain amount of schools and a certain amount of conferences, so they're getting their ACC pick because they want to get all the other spots later down the road with these SEC on SEC matchups, these Big Ten matchups, even though they don't have a deal with the Big Ten, they got to get one ACC game. So I guess it's Miami and Florida. But why this one? You have a hot team, a red hot team in the Miami Hurricanes, and then you have an ice cold team in Florida. Why? Why is this the game? You had so many other options on the table this week. You had Texas Tech versus Utah. Texas Tech, yeah, it's Texas Tech versus Utah, right? Why do I feel like they're playing Baylor? It's Texas Tech, Utah. Texas Tech and Utah. Two ranked teams at 17 and 16. I think Utah's going to win that game because defensively they're a super strong team under Kyle Whittingham, and they finally don't have Cam Rising in for like the 8th year in a row. But like Utah, this game is going to decide potentially one of the spots in the Big 12 because Kansas State just is not what everyone thought they were going to be. Just completely flunked the bed. This is a potential Big 12 contention game. But nope, no game day there. Another option that you could have gone with. You could have gone with, you could have gone with Michigan, Nebraska. Probably not because that's a CBS game, but at 3:30. But you could have gone with that one. You could have gone with Auburn versus Oklahoma. 2 SEC games. I get it. You're going to get your SEC games. I'm sure. I know you will. But you got to pick that game. I personally like Oklahoma, but maybe that's a trap game. Auburn comes in and swoops in, gets a win. You could have gone Illinois, Indiana, a number 9 versus a number 19. I think Indiana's going to win that game because Curt Cignetti is an experienced coach. I'll take Curt Cignetti over Brent Bielema, but they are the number 9 team in the country, and they played really well against Duke. You have Tulane and Ole Miss. That is the game that I feel like should have really been College game day, in my opinion, because you have an Ole Miss team in shout out Trinidad Chambliss. He's the real starting quarterback for Ole Miss. Balled out coming in for Austin Simmons, and I was kind of blowing some smoke saying Austin Simmons, I think he's a good quarterback. No, it's Trinidad. My mistake. It was Trinidad Chambliss, the Ferris State National champion at the Division II level. Trinidad Chambliss. Trinidad Chambliss, man. Remember the name. Remember the lane. He's on the lane train here today. But anyway, so Tulane could be the team that steps in USF's way, and Tulane can jump in to make the college football playoff. Lane Kiffin even said that he thinks John Summerall has a spot in the SEC as a head coach. He thinks he'll be an SEC coach next year. Didn't come from me. It came from Lane Kiffin. There were just so many better options that you could have gone for College game day. But nope, we're settled with Miami and Florida. Now, speaking of Miami, I do think they have the player who is right now the Heisman favorite. The Heisman favorite right now in Carson Beck. If you look at all the quarterbacks that we've been talking about this year, Lenora Sellers, Arch Manning, to a little lesser extent, John Mateer, they're all not living up to expectations, except for Carson Beck. And it's not very often, and I'll be honest, I wasn't super high on Carson Beck because, to be honest, it's super rare, I feel like, when you see quarterbacks who do really well their first year, they're the main starter, then regress the next year. And then the year after that, they come back and progress well. You see it all the time at the NFL level, but that's because they play multiple seasons. At the college level, you don't see that very often. And now maybe you'll see it a little bit more often with the transfers. But Carson Beck, I think he has to be the Heisman favorite right now. Trinidad Chambliss might come. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, I like Carson Beck. I like what he is. He's the Heisman favorite right now. And we'll see how he does against some of these other games. I'm gonna be excited to see how he does against Louisville. And speaking of the ACC, I was kind of talking about this earlier with some of my friends, was what if they had a situation in the ACC, what happened to the Big 12 in 2009? What if they have 3 teams that go like undefeated or have 1 loss all to each other in a triad, like a little triangle where and for this example, let's just do Georgia Tech, the team I just mentioned, Miami, and Louisville. What if all those teams have 1 loss or go undefeated? Now, I'm not going to go into the schedule. I'm not going to go into potential losses because this is all hypothetical, and obviously you have tiebreakers here and there. But eventually, we're going to get a scenario like that. We're going to get a scenario where we're going to have like a 2009 Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and Texas, where they all lose to each other, only have 1 loss on the season, and only one team is going to have to go to the conference title game, or 2 of those teams go to, and one gets left out. Now, with the expanded playoff, it's a little less, doesn't matter as much, but I don't know, something to consider. All right. So I kind of talked about Ole Miss a little bit earlier, but like Lane Kiffin getting an East 60 documentary. This is going to feed families. As Lane Kiffin said, get your popcorn ready. Get your popcorn ready. Lane Kiffin, I'm sorry if it sounds redundant, but I'm on the Lane train. Like I feel like too many people were high on Ole Miss last season that I feel, and that's where I kind of like stayed straight away and was kind of playing contrarian. But no one's talking about Ole Miss. I feel like, you know, the mainstream media, no one's really talking about Ole Miss. Now maybe that changes after this documentary, and then it just puts a wrench in their season. I don't know. But just the development of Lane Kiffin's coaching career being viscerally hated by the public, by the media, for being this young head coach who was given everything. Dad was a defensive mastermind with the Tampa 2 defense. Comes in, flops in the NFL, kind of was taken under his wing against a enormously talented USC team with Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, Lendell White, Troy Polamalu, Mike Williams. The list goes on and on. But goes to Tennessee, only goes 1 year, does okay. The next year, heads immediately to USC. But let me remind you, USC was pretty good under Lane Kiffin. Not fantastic, not great. But he went there before the sanctions were actually put out there. He goes there, gets these sanctions, ruined his career basically at USC. Gets fired on the tarmac. But what a redemption and what an arc. And you saw the tidbit in a little bit of that clip that in the trailer for his documentary, that he used to not care what people's perception was, but now he wants to reframe that perception and that perspective. I think it's going to be great. I'm going to tune in. I'm really amped. Probably the most amped I've ever been since Swamp Kings. And I know people dog on Swamp Kings because it wasn't the documentary that everyone was thinking. It was just a glorified 06, 08 Urban Meyer Florida Gators documentary. But I still think that was a great documentary, and I was hyped to watch that. Now I'm just as hyped to watch this Lane Kiffin documentary. It's going to be a lot of fun. Gonna be a lot of fun. Now, another team in the SEC, Vanderbilt, just absolutely dog walked South Carolina. Put some respect on Vandy. Don't sleep on Vandy. Diego Pavia said that he's trying to get Vanderbilt the national title. This is a team that, dare I say it, could potentially compete to win the SEC. They can win the SEC. They very much could. They got a long road, got a tough road. I like Clark Lee, though. A Nashville guy, played at Vanderbilt, is the head coach now, and he's turning that program around. In arguably the most competitive conference in all of college football. And it's super impressive. You almost wonder, like, and the thing is like, would anybody have even said anything if they lost to South Carolina? Probably not. They're just like, oh, it's just Vanderbilt. They're one of the bottom feeders in the SEC. You tell me. But they're undefeated. Now the first two games were against Charleston Southern and Virginia Tech, and the rest of the schedule, they have some tough opponents. They go on the road to Alabama, LSU, Missouri, at Texas. And then the final game of the season, they're on the road at Tennessee. Also have Auburn at home. How's Vandy going to finish? Honestly, if they just upset like a few of these teams, like they beat Alabama last year, why not this year? LSU doesn't look that great this year. I know Brian Kelly had that whole press conference with that reporter and then apologized after, which, pull up the stats. Pull up the stats on the LSU offense and how efficient they are. They're not that efficient. They do not look like the third best team in the country. I still think they're good, but they don't look like the third best team in the country. I wouldn't put them at number 3 in my AP poll. But that's just me. That's just me. But yeah, guys, don't sleep on Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's going to be a good team this year. They're going to make a bowl game. They are going to make a bowl games. But now, if you look at some of the games this week, to kind of preview the games that are happening this week, So I kind of touched on a little bit of them. I already talked about Utah and Texas Tech. I'm going with Utah. Florida and Miami. That one's going to be an interesting game. I think Florida is a lot better than what their record shows. But also DJ Lagway threw 5 interceptions. Is this a rebound game? Maybe. But it's going to be tough. And Florida got trounced by Miami at home last year. It's going to be tough. Going to be tough. You got the Civil War between Oregon State. I got Oregon 50-0. Oregon State, they're probably going to fire their coach soon. I'm sorry. Love the Beavers. Love the Beavers, but you're a baseball school. A good baseball school, in fact. Auburn, Oklahoma. I'm going to go with Oklahoma. I like John Mateer. I think that one's going to be a really close game. Maybe like a 3-score game. I was kind of low on Oklahoma. I do think eventually they're going to get tripped up somewhere. It's just, what game is it? Could be this game. Could be Hugh Freeze. But Michigan and Nebraska. Biff Poggi still the interim coach. Still the interim coach. And this is the one where it really matters. And this is also the game. Is Dylan Raiola for real? Is he a top 5 quarterback in the nation? Got a chance to prove it against this Michigan team. And some people are going to be doubters and say, oh, well, Michigan's defense is just bad. No, you can't have both. You can't just go one side because someone said the other and just trying to play. You're just trying to argue at that point. I don't even know if that made any sense, but anyway, hopefully you get the point I'm trying to get across. But you also got Notre Dame and Purdue. Purdue's doing really well under Barry Odom. They're 2-1. Notre Dame should not be ranked. They're 0-2. They should not be ranked. I don't care if they go 10-2 because their schedule's a freaking cakewalk the rest of the way. You're 0-2 right now. Too many of the voters are playing for the future and trying to make themselves look good in the future. It's like they got a flux capacitor and they're heading over into the future or whatever, or into the past, whatever it is. But I do think Notre Dame's going to dog walk Purdue. I like Barry Odom, but just I think this is the game where they're like, okay, we got to wake up. We got to wake up. You got South Carolina, Missouri. Can South Carolina bounce back? Missouri playing a part of their 8 home games in a row or whatever it is. Still ranked at 23 in the country. A bounce back. Is this a bounce back game for Lenore? Lenore Sellers got hurt in the last game. And that's the other thing too, is did Vandy just capitalize because Lenore Sellers got hurt? I don't think so. I just think Vanderbilt's good. How's South Carolina going to respond? Is it a next man up mentality? Now, Illinois and Indiana. I think I touched on this a little bit earlier. I like Indiana because I like Kurt Cignetti. I think he's a better coach than Brett Bielema. But and this is also an Indiana team that is just, they made the college football playoff last season, and maybe they're not as good as what they were last year, I don't think, but they did score 73 points last week. Yes, it was Indiana State, but 73 points is 73 points. Yeah, that's kind of all the big games that are happening this week, week 4, college football season. Also, Louisville taking on Bowling Green. Pudge got credentialed. Pudge, how'd you do it? How'd you get credentialed? How did you do it? I'm at Louisville. How'd you get one? I don't have one. I'll be there, but I don't have one. And Pudge has one. Got the cards, baby. Sorry, Pudge. You're gonna just don't throw paws at me. Don't throw paws at me. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Instagram, and what's the other one? TikTok, Instagram, and X. We're on X. You can watch and listen to full episodes on Spotify and YouTube. So that's going to do it for today's episode of the Tyler Bright and Early Podcast, PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football center.